Hi, my name is Hannah and welcome to Wonderland. Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland is a story like none other. Set in the Victorian era, women typically got married from ages 8 to 25. We follow Alice as she gains insight about the world around her in an unusual way. Now sit back, relax, and try not to fall into a rabbit hole. Chapter 1: Down the Rabbit Hole.
7-year-old Alice is sitting next to her sister who is reading a book that Alice becomes bored with. As she is dozing off, a white rabbit runs past her, expressing that he is late. Alice then follows him into the woods where he goes down a rabbit hole. I'm late. Alice jumps as well. She falls for quite a while and eventually she reaches the bottom of the hole. She finds herself in a room lined with doors and soon finds out they are locked. She then grabs a key from the table and tries all the doors, but it only matches a small door she can't fit through. She then finds a bottle that is labeled Drink Me and drinks it. Alice then shrinks and is finally able to fit through the door, but she forgets the key. She then begins to cry out of anger when she finds a small cake labeled Eat Me. Alice takes a bite out of the cake.
Alice is very determined to get into the garden because of the beauty she believes is behind it, but she must face many obstacles before she gets to enter. It reminds me of a story from long ago about a man and a woman who were also trying to get in the garden, but they came across a problem of their own. Chapter 2: The Pool of Tears.
Alice then grows 9 feet tall and is too big for the room. She begins to cry again, and due to her large tears, a pool of water is now at her feet. The rabbit then appears, but he runs away, scared of Alice's height, dropping his fan and gloves. Alice grabs the fan and begins fanning herself. She realizes that the fanning motion is causing her to shrink. She shrinks down to her tiny size and is eager to get through the door, but she forgets the key again. She then swims in the pool of her own tears where she comes across a mouse. The mouse tells her to swim to the shore with him, followed by animals that had fallen into the pool.
Alice sure got herself stuck in a pickle. It must be so exhausting changing sizes so much. I imagine it would be hard to control one's emotions under these circumstances. All she wants to do is enter the garden, but there is so much in her way. Chapter 3: A Caucus Race and a Lawn.
Alice and the animals make it to land when the dodo suggests a caucus race to dry off. They all then run around for an hour when the dodo says the race is over and everyone has won. The dodo then elects Alice to hand out prizes. She then gives the mitts to all the animals. The mouse then tells everyone he will tell his tale. While telling his story, Alice gets accused of not listening and the animals swim away. Alice begins to cry again when she hears footsteps.
The caucus race actually represents the ridiculousness of English politics during this time. Carroll sets the dodo as the leader in a play on words suggesting the people making these decisions were not the best. By insisting they all run around circles, it focuses on the ideals of doing something over and over without achieving anything. Chapter 4: The Rabbit Sins in a Little.
The white rabbit approaches Alice looking for his fan and gloves, and when she cannot find them, he commands her to go to his house to fetch his things. Inside the house, she finds his things when she comes across another bottle labeled Drink Me. She then drinks it and grows so big she can barely fit inside the room. When the rabbit realizes he cannot go into his house, he calls for his servants and they throw pebbles at her. Alice realizes the pebbles are turning into cake, so she eats it and becomes small again and runs out of the house.
Alice is still not doing so well with her size. When she grew so big, she couldn't even fit in the house. This was a change she was not ready to grow into. Once again, these changes cause her to have powerful feelings that she hasn't had before. Chapter 5: Advice from a Caterpillar.
After running away, she comes across a caterpillar on a mushroom smoking a hookah. The caterpillar asks her, "Who are you?" When Alice does not respond, she turns to leave, but the caterpillar stops her and recites a poem. Alice then expresses that being 3 inches tall is awful, and the caterpillar goes to leave, but not before telling her that one side of the mushroom will allow her to grow and the other will allow her to shrink. Alice takes a piece from the right side and grows so tall her head is above the trees. A pigeon then attacks her because it thinks she's trying to eat the pigeon's eggs. Alice explains that she will not eat her eggs and eats the left side of the mushroom, allowing her to return to her normal size. She then wanders to a 4-foot house and eats a part of the mushroom to be 9 inches tall.
Alice just can't seem to get a break. When she grows as tall as the trees, she's mistaken for a serpent. As if she hasn't already been faced with the trouble of her changing size, she is now questioning on who she is. Chapter 6: Pig and Pepper.
A fishman knocks on the door to the house, where the frogman answers and takes the invitation for the Duchess. Alice goes to knock on the door, but the frogman insists she will not be able to enter. Alice notices a crack in the door and walks inside. She then finds the Duchess with a baby and a chef. The Duchess throws the baby at Alice, and she takes it outside. When outside, Alice discovers the baby is a pig and she lets it go. He then comes across the Cheshire Cat, where he suggests she should visit the Mad Hatter and the March Hare. She expresses she does not want to visit anyone that is mad when he tells her everyone in Wonderland is mad. Then Cheshire Cat tells her he will see her at the Queen's croquet match and disappears.
Their behavior shakes Alice from what she thought she knew about the social order. These series of events leave her confused, but draw her to her own conclusions. Alice begins to embrace the odd social behaviors of Wonderland, rejecting everything she thought she knew. Chapter 7: A Mad Tea Party.
Alice comes to a large table where the Mad Hatter, March Hare, and a Dormouse are having tea. After having a conversation filled with uncivil acts and riddles, the Mad Hatter asks the March Hare what time it was. After arguing about his broken watch, Alice becomes upset with his silly riddles. The Mad Hatter explains that time is upset, and time is always 6 o'clock, which is tea time. The Dormouse then tells a story Alice is confused about. And when she asks questions, everyone gets upset. She then storms off back into the woods where she finds a tree with a door. She finds herself in the room lined with doors, where she grabs the key and goes through the door to the garden.
After learning about the concept of time as a person, Alice realizes that time can punish you if you offend it. For example, taking advantage of it. While the Mad Hatter and March Hare continue their ramble of conversations, Alice becomes confused. Imagining this is how tea time is for everyone, a mixture of rambling nonsense that Alice has no interest in. Chapter 8: The Queen's Croquet Ground.
When entering the garden, Alice comes across gardeners shaped like playing cards. They express they were painting the white roses red before the Queen of Hearts found they planted the wrong ones. The Queen then appears and asks Alice questions about the gardeners, insisting that they should be decapitated. After helping them hide, Alice follows the Queen to the croquet match. Alice is confused by the match that is played, with the hedgehogs and the flamingos. She then tries to leave when she sees Cheshire Cat. Alice begins complaining when the King sees them and calls for the Queen to remove the Cheshire Cat. She calls for it to be decapitated, but they can't figure out how to catch it. By then, Cheshire Cat had already disappeared.
At last, Alice reaches the garden where she has been dreaming of the whole time. But then she realizes that is not what she hoped for and now sees it is a place that makes her feel uneasy. She concludes that she has more of a voice in Wonderland than she initially thought. This causes her to view Wonderland in a whole other perspective. Chapter 9: The Mock Turtle's Story, and Chapter 10: The Lobster
The Queen calls Alice to resume the croquet game. Soon the game ends when the Queen decides Alice should meet the Mock Turtle. The Queen takes her to the Gryphon, who leads her to the Mock Turtle. Alice notices that the Mock Turtle is sad, but the Gryphon shows no empathy. The Mock Turtle begins talking about himself, but after Alice interrupts many times, the Gryphon changes the subject to games. After sobbing, the Mock Turtle asks Alice if she's ever met a lobster. She replies no. Then the Mock Turtle and the Gryphon tell her about the lobster Corral. After they dance and sing, Alice interrupts to ask about the wedding. This leads to a conversation where Alice recounts her time in Wonderland when the Mock Turtle asks her to recite the poem she heard from the caterpillar. After many failed tries, the Gryphon suggests that she should hear another song from the Mock Turtle. After singing the song, they hear someone say, "The trial's beginning," and they go on their way.
Although they speak with the same nonsense language everyone else does, Alice finds relief within the Gryphon and Mock Turtle. Alice finds them relatable and so much kinder than the others she's met so far. This also confuses Alice because she expected everyone to be rude to her. Chapter 11: Who Stole the Toy?
Alice and the Gryphon arrive at the courtroom, and she questions many of their behaviors. The trial was about the Knave of Hearts stealing the Queen's tart. The Mad Hatter is the first witness when he rambles about hats and testifies that the March Hare said something. The March Hare denies saying anything, and the Mad Hatter says that the Dormouse said something, but he was asleep. After listening to the Mad Hatter's nonsense, the King tells the Mad Hatter to leave. They then call the cook to testify, but after the madness, he runs away, and Alice is called to the stand.
Alice is excited to discover that the courtroom is similar to the one she knows of. However, Wonderland disappoints her once again. Like the caucus race, this is another useless commotion. Carol also relates this to the Victorian era where he perceives the court system to be ineffective. Chapter 12: Alice's Evidence.
When Alice is on the stand, she says she knows nothing whatever. After debating whether what she said was important or unimportant, the King speaks of Rule 42. All persons more than a mile high to leave the court. After arguing about the rule, they conclude that the Knave of Hearts is guilty because he didn't sign the bottom of the letter that wasn't even in his handwriting. Alice then argued with the Queen, causing her to call for Alice's beheading. Alice then gets attacked and is forced to fight against her attackers. Suddenly, Alice wakes up in her sister's lap and tells her all about her adventures. Her sister insists that she goes inside for tea. As she walks, she hopes that she will keep her childlike spirit as she grows.
While this story might have your head spinning, this story touches on the journey of life through the child's eyes. Alice is at a point in her life where she is about to take on changes and expresses the anxieties in Wonderland. Throughout the story, we watch Alice grow and shrink, never quite comfortable in her situation. Despite these frustrating encounters, Alice still travels through Wonderland with her childlike spirit. Alice finds herself in life-threatening conditions but never fully grasps the consequences of dangerous actions. Surrounded by a queen who wants her beheaded, consuming random substances, and jumping down a potentially dangerous rabbit hole, her impulsiveness is definitely that of a child. As we look deeper in the story, we see how every encounter ties into the bigger picture. No matter how hard Alice tries, she could never keep up with the White Rabbit. He symbolizes time and how fast it moves. As Alice matures, she chases after more time because she doesn't feel ready to grow up. His name comes from the Victorian expression, smile like a Cheshire cat, which means to smile broadly in a self-satisfying way. Similar to one's internal monologue, he comes and goes as he pleases while encouraging Alice to be true to herself. However, with aging, our mentality isn't the only thing that is growing. During the Victorian era, Alice was approaching the ripe age where, things change. The caterpillar reflects Alice, who will soon burst out of her cocoon into a beautiful butterfly. The caterpillar also shows her how to change her size with the mushroom and adapt to the things around her. Would you look at the time? 6 o'clock. It's tea time. I finally remembered the story about the garden. In biblical times, Adam and Eve were offered a great life in the Garden of Eden when they disobeyed the rules and were banished. Alice imagines the garden she wants to enter as innocent and sacred, but just like the Garden of Eden, appearances aren't everything. Her adventure marks the end of her childhood innocence, but she's not ready to leave her old ways behind just yet. Wonderland and Alice that was, and what did they put in this stuff?